Even the concept of the zebra, right? You have multiple chronic illnesses all combined in the same system.
That's something they're just discovering. And just in the last few years, they're now learning this isn't just connective tissue. This is a multi-systemic condition.
Months later, here comes the Chronic Brew, where now I'm just not focused on CKD, but having conversations like this,
Right.
we get the struggle.
And doctors are finding connections more now because patients are connecting with each other from all over the world, and we're sharing our experiences, and we're saying, oh my gosh, me too. If you interview enough zebras, you're going to get very similar stories.
I didn't have the strength that I have now. That's when you really need people
who could understand.
It really did make a difference.
So finding that community, finding that tribe.
Or in that realm of chronic illness and stuff.
I barely go through it because I'd be so focused.
Never thought in a million years that would have to happen to me.
So all those emotions are valid. Every last one of them.
I was at a low point.
Just kind of removing the stigma.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the Chronic Brew. Peeps, welcome back to the Chronic Brew, the space where we pull up a chair, grab a warm mug, and get real about the lived experiences of chronic illness. I'm your host, Mr. Cool Beans, and today we're talking about the art of advocacy. Not just in the doctor's office, but in the quiet moments between ourselves and our bodies. We often hear that healing is a straight line, or that strength is measured by how hard we can push. But what happens when the life you built, the career, the workouts, the go, all of that hits a wall? Today's guest has a lived, shared experience from the high-stakes world of law to the deeply personal world of nervous system regulation. And she's here to help us navigate the alphabet soup of chronic labels with grace and strategy. Joining us today is a woman who has turned her own complex health journey into a masterclass on self-advocacy. She's a mom, a wife, and a former paralegal who once lived for the next heavy lift at the gym. Today, she is widely known as the thriving zebra. After navigating the intersection of POTS, MCAS, EDS, just to name a few, she shifted her focus from powering through to healing through. By deep diving into hormone health and nervous system regulation, she learned how to redefine strength and trust her own body again. Peeps, please welcome to the brew, Celestial Doble. Celestial,
Hey.
welcome to the podcast, fam. How are you doing?
I'm okay. I'm alive.
You're alive. Awesome. A lot of people ask me, how do you come up with these real fanciful intros? And I guess my theory behind it is, out of your circle of friends, you're probably the one individual that they know is going through something really difficult, but is making the most out of everything. So pretty much you're the superhero in a lot of circles.
That's awesome.
So with that, before we even take our first sip of today's conversation, just a quick reminder to the listeners. While we're deep diving into the lived experience and personal advocacy of our lives, the information shared in this episode is for educational and storytelling purposes only. It's not a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Okay, we're not doctors here, so don't just take our word for it. Always seek the advice of your own physician and other qualified health providers with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition. All right, sound good?
Yep.
All right, so it's time for our brand new tradition here on the podcast called The First Sip. Since you spent years in the legal world as a paralegal, I know you have a very sharp eye for evidence and a quick mind for making judgments. So I want you to put those skills to the test in a new way. I'm going to present you with 4 chronic illness dilemmas. Instead of a courtroom verdict, I just want your gut reaction as we take the first sip together. You're going to tell me, is the situation sweet, meaning you're all in and yes, it's for you, or it's bitter, like I'm good, I'm all right, it's a hard pass. All right? Are you ready to take the stand for your very first sip?
Sure.
All right, here we go. Dilemma number 1. When you find a brand new research paper or a clinical study that perfectly explains one of your weirdest symptoms and you feel like you just found the smoking gun in a major court case, sweet or bitter?
Sweet.
Sweet, all right. Racing to finish your to-do list by 10 a.m. because you know the fatigue wall is coming at noon, sweet or bitter?
Bitter. Absolutely bitter.
All right, super bitter. All right. Next one. Canceling plans last minute because your body voted no, even though you were really looking forward to going.
Bitter.
Man, a lot of bitter going on here. All right. Last one. When a stranger suggests just think positive or drink more celery juice will cure a genetic condition, sweet or bitter?
Bitter.
All right, now I want to know why bitter on that last one. Drink some more celery juice. Why is that
Oh
bitter?
gosh. Unsolicited advice. It is oh my gosh, it's just such a trigger. It's such a trigger. Like I mean I get it. They're trying to help. It worked for them, so maybe it'll work for you too, and that sort of thing. But most of us with these chronic illnesses, we have tried everything. We've
Right.
been the victim to all of the influencers, the MLMs, the natural cures, and
Yep.
I mean, I've heard it all, from blood oil changes to do yoga, which if yoga was the answer, I never would have gotten sick because I was a yoga addict to begin with.
Well, there it is.
And, the meditation, and I still lean on those things for help,
Mhm.
but they're not a cure at all.
Wow.
And some people will come at you like, oh, well, you just need to do yoga. You just need to drink celery juice. Like, yeah, celery juice is really going to cure my genetic connective tissue disorder. Like, that's like putting paint on a house and expecting that to fix its foundation. It's not going to happen.
I think we all can agree that unsolicited advice is about as bitter as. Have you ever had burnt espresso?
Oh yeah, that's awful.
Yeah, guys, burnt espresso. It tastes. You know what? All right, we'll save espresso for later.
Okay.
But it's actually that sharp analytical mind, that court case edge. That I want to talk about next.
Okay.
You've had this massive shift from the courtroom and the gym to a life of advocacy that you lead now. To kick things off, I'd love to go back to the beginning. Before the alphabet soup diagnosis and all that stuff, you were a paralegal and a self-described gym addict. What did your life look like then? And looking back now, were there any early whispers from your body that you were maybe just too busy to hear?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I at this point, looking back now, I'd probably call them screams versus whispers.
Okay.
But my life then was completely different. I was a different person, I feel like, even as a whole. I had the energy to shower every day.
Right.
I miss that. Like you said, I was a mom, a wife, full-time paralegal, and everything that comes with that. My boss even used to call me Wonder Woman, and at the time I just thought, there's no way. Like, I'm just living a normal life. But looking back now, I can see how she saw that,
Right.
And my husband and I, we were 50-50 partners. We've been together since high school. So, I mean, we know each other better than most people do. And life was insanely busy, but it was good. And I loved the feeling of being productive and strong and capable and, young enough to keep up with my kids. We started really young. I had my first at 17 and my last by the time I was 23. So, we always told ourselves, when my youngest is 18, I'll only be 41. And that's when my husband will be retired soon. And we're like, okay, then we're going to travel and do all these things. But yeah, there were definitely, screams from my body. I've been in pain since I was 5 years old. I remember the exact day that it started. We had gone shopping with my grandma for my first day of school. And it was excruciating, just foot, leg pain. And it never stopped from there. Like, I've lived with chronic pain since I was 5 years old. Growing up, I would randomly pass out, especially during choir performances. I didn't know that my knees bend backwards. My choir teacher would always yell at me that I was hyperextending my knees, and I kept saying, no, I'm not, but I really was. I just didn't know. And I was super bendy. I bruised easily. I sprained my ankle constantly, but so did my mom and my aunt and my grandma. So I just thought that was kind of like a little family quirk.
Right.
And doctors didn't know anything. They just shrug and they say everything looked normal. All your labs are normal. So I learned to treat my body's whispers or screams like background noise. And even during pregnancy, like things that happened looking back now that were huge red flags. My stretch marks split open and bled.
Whoa.
Yeah. My hip would slip out of place when my baby would stretch in my belly. And I didn't even mention it because it didn't really hurt. It kind of just felt weird and icky. And I thought it was normal, because everybody says, oh, well, your hips are going to spread when you're pregnant. So I just thought that's what it felt like.
Mm.
And I didn't know until, the appointment of my EDS assessment, when my doctor did the Baton score. My specialist told me, he was asking me if I had had any dislocations or subluxations. And I didn't know what a subluxation was at that time. And so I asked him and he said, well, it's when the joint partially comes out of place. And I said,
Wow.
and then I explained the thing with my hip. I said, well, I've had these moments during pregnancy where my hip kind of feels weird. And I said, maybe, yeah, it did slip out of place. My baby would stretch and then I would have to lay on the floor and have my husband pull on my leg and it would pop back into place. And
Wow.
he looked at me and he said, do you realize the hip is one of the hardest joints in the body to dislocate? And I had no idea. And he asked me, did it hurt? And I said, not really. It just kind of felt weird. Like I didn't feel like I could walk on it. It felt unstable. And I said, and it just instinct told me that if my husband pulled on my leg, it would feel better. And it did. And he kind of just laughed at me. But I had no idea that any of these things weren't normal. There's no guidance from doctors, and back then, 40 years ago or 20 years ago when I was pregnant, the awareness even then was just lacking, and it's hugely increased in the last 10 years since the new CEO started the Ehlers-Danlos Society.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, back then it just was absolutely unheard of.
Wow.
I'm Celestial. I am the thriving zebra. I love crafts. I'm a seamstress. I have been sewing since I was 6 years old. I used to be really big into scrapbooking when my kids were little. I'm a very creative person at heart. I nurture a small jungle of houseplants. I am on Facebook, Instagram, Threads. The best place really to reach me is Instagram. I'm on there the most.
Most of us, we have that line in the sand moment where, the power through mentality just stops working. Like,
Yeah.
that I can just keep going. I can keep going. But for you, what was the catalyst for you? What was that moment when you realized that this wasn't just a rough patch, but a completely new chapter that you had to like navigate through?
Yeah, so I kind of had two. I guess my body says go big or go home.
Usually, it tries to say that to us.
The first one was March of 2019, and this is the crash that forced me from my career. I couldn't stop sleeping, and it just came out of nowhere. And I was sleeping so much that my husband would even come in and check my pulse because, like I said, we've been together since high school, and
Right.
he'd never seen me like sleep this much. I was sleeping like 16, 18 hours and just
Oh
was
man.
still so exhausted. And it was really scary. We didn't know what was going on. And I was having all these other weird symptoms. At the time, I had a really good endocrinologist. He's the one that had finally listened and diagnosed me with Hashimoto's. And he, ran every test he could think of within his ability.
Real quick,
Yeah.
real quick, for the listeners who don't know what Hashimoto is, could you quickly describe what Hashimoto is?
Absolutely. So Hashimoto's is an autoimmune condition where your body attacks your thyroid.
Wow.
And if it goes long enough, then your body causes permanent damage to your thyroid. And 90% of people who are hypothyroid, which means a sluggish thyroid, they have Hashimoto's. And it's hugely underdiagnosed. Most doctors don't run a full thyroid panel. And it took me 15 years to get a thyroid diagnosis. And by then my body had already done permanent damage. So I am permanently hypothyroid now.
Okay, so going back 2019, you get this diagnosis.
Yeah. So he had run, all the tests that he could think of. Like I said, there's just very little knowledge of EDS, POTS, and MCAS. So none of that was tested for. He diagnosed me with chronic fatigue syndrome and adrenal dysfunction. My cortisol was normal, but it was at the very bottom end of normal. And so he felt that if I, reduced stress and rested, that it wouldn't turn into full-blown adrenal insufficiency, that I would be able to heal and get better. And he thought in a few years that I would improve. And so I did what he said, and I really felt like I was improving. By 2022, I felt like I, was getting some energy back, and even to the point where I applied for another job. It was the type of job where you have to go through, quite a bit of testing and a background check and that sort of thing. So I was still going through all of that processing, and they were going through my background check, and then April of 2023 happened. So this is 4 years apart. So I had gone shopping with my daughter, which that girl can shop. I mean, she makes shopping an extreme sport. So
okay.
We are out all day long, I think 10, 12 hours, and, just having fun and enjoying the day. This is her annual birthday shopping trip. But I came home and I slept on the couch for a week and didn't realize an entire week had gone by.
Wait, hold on. Pause for a second. Hold on. Wait a minute. So I heard what you said, but I'm processing it.
Mm-hmm.
You slept for like a week. Like we're talking, okay, wake up, get a snack in the middle of the night, go back to sleep, wake up, kind of do, or just like straight through for a whole entire week?
No, I got up for, necessities, bathroom break.
Oh, okay.
I honestly don't even remember eating. And the way that this had all passed without me knowing is my husband was out of town. I was home alone, so I didn't have somebody there to be like, hey, it's been 2 days and you haven't moved from the couch. And when I realized this, it's like I kind of just my watch was going off like crazy. That's what happened. My watch kept telling me high heart rate while I was sleeping, like 143 beats per minute.
Oh, man.
And I remember just being in such a daze that I couldn't really grasp what was going on. And then I was talking on the phone with my husband, and that's when I realized it had been an entire week. And I know he must have called me in that moment, but I was just so disassociated that I had just lost all time. And that was extremely scary. I still can't comprehend how I lost so much track of time in that, period. And I, started paying attention to my vitals, and, my blood pressure was nuts. My heart rate was nuts. I was hot and cold at the same time. I was having tremors. Just all these weird symptoms. And it completely shook me. That moment at that moment, I understood that the rules had changed. Right. This is different. This crash is different than the first one. And I never recovered from it. This is my life now. I've had some small improvements since then, but this is it. I have not dramatically improved from that moment in 2023.
Wow. Forgive me, but I definitely thought when you said you slept for a whole week, like you closed your eyes on Sunday and woke up next Sunday. I was just like, what kind of, magnesium are you taking? What was that? But because I could use anyway.
Yeah.
You talked about You talked about going to the doctor's office and reading your labs, and they were saying everything was normal, or maybe on the lower end of normal. And also you have this unique background as a paralegal. And I know in the legal world, it's all about the facts and the evidence. How did you start using those professional muscles to advocate for yourself in the doctor's appointments, especially when you were being told that everything was normal?
It didn't happen all at once, and it's definitely something I'm still working on.
Okay.
I After decades of dismissal and doctors not understanding what your body is going through, I I'm permanently left, I think, with white coat syndrome. I get nervous,
Yeah.
and even with the doctors that I know and I trust, and I still get that little tingle of anxiety, before
Oh,
each appointment.
I got you, girl. I get it. I
But
get it.
but yeah, as far as my experience of researching and documentation and timelines and organization, yeah, that would be where I flexed my paralegal muscles. Just knowing where to look for information too is extremely important, because there's so much misinformation out there online.
Right.
So that's a big part of it. And I dove deep into research papers as much as I could find, and online support groups, just to learn from others and their experiences. And I've been able to just better educate myself on my conditions. And now I can confidently ask more thorough questions, because I have an understanding of what's going on, not only through my lived experience, but through what I've learned from research papers, as much as I can understand. Like, some of them are really like, it's like, what language are they speaking? And
Right.
it's different from legal jargon.
Right.
So it's taken some practice, but I think for the most part I get the gist of what's going on. And now I can ask, like I said, those better questions. And then with the right providers, you'll get better answers. Just knowing what questions to ask and knowing how to document your symptoms, and, that sort of thing. It's so important, and it's made a big difference for me.
Oh, absolutely. I can imagine for sure. You and I are both a part of the Chronic Comfort Club. And what I've
Yeah.
come to learn is that, living with POTS, MCAS, EDS, all of those chronic conditions, it can feel like you're fighting on four different fronts, all at one time. So my question for you now is, like, what was there a specific moment where the light bulb went off and you realized that these weren't just random symptoms? Like, these were a connected system, rather, that needed a different approach.
Yeah. I think that was definitely the day that I was diagnosed with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome.
Okay.
And and my doctor had explained to me, because at the time I didn't know what that was.
Right.
I had come across it in the past, in my research before, like, just, and I don't know, it would pop up and I just thought, no, that's not me. I'm not that extreme. There's no way. And I would
Right.
just not even look into it further. But
Hmm.
anyways, I think it was definitely that moment. And, leaving the doctor's appointment, it was kind of like in the movies when, everybody's life flashes before their eyes, or there's the wavy lines and the heart music,
Right. Right. Right.
except my brain isn't that fancy. But as I was leaving the appointment, all those little screams, those whispers are all coming together, and I'm realizing this is all part of living with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. Like,
Hmm.
all of these crazy things that I've had, like the rare birth defect that I was born with, I think is absolutely linked to Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. And then, all the other stuff, like I used to get sick all the time. I was in the hospital for, I don't even know how long. I think maybe 2 weeks. When I was in like third grade, I had pneumonia really bad, and then had to go home with an at-home care nurse. And I had to have corrective surgery to, fix my lazy eye. And I don't know. It's been all these weird little things. And now I know that's all Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. The slow healing when I had abdominal surgery, and my doctor going, I've never seen that before. And, it was like light bulb, this is why all of it is because of Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, and just how much it affects our body. Our body is mostly connective tissue. And when you have a connective tissue disorder, it affects literally everything.
Everything.
Yeah.
Wow. I remember you mentioning POTS. Take us through POTS. What is an experience with POTS like? And what kind of testing do they do to see if you have POTS? Like, what's that like?
So they can do just your orthostatic vitals in a doctor's appointment. It's called the poor man's tilt table test, or the NASA lean test. And that's where they will have you lay down and rest for a few minutes. They, take a look at your heart rate and your blood pressure. Then they have you sit up, and then they take your blood pressure, your heart rate. Then they have you stand in place for about 5 minutes, and they take your, heart rate and blood pressure. And the POTS criteria is an increase of 30 beats per minute within 10 minutes of standing without a significant drop in blood pressure. And if you're somebody like me who has hyperadrenergic POTS, my blood pressure goes up. So my primary had done the in-office orthostatic, vitals. And he's the one who said, I think you have POTS. And I said, what the heck is that?
Yeah, like POTS, are we cooking? Like, what's going on?
Right. And so he explained, it's dysfunction of the autonomic nervous system. So that is, all of the automatic systems in your body: breathing, digestion, heart rate, blood pressure. The list goes on. Any of those functions your body does that it does without you thinking about, that's the autonomic nervous system. And our bodies are confused. They're mixed up. So it, doesn't know how to regulate your blood pressure when you put your hands above your head, or reaching away from your body, like to make the bed. All the potsies listening right now can raise their hand and say making the bed is one of the hardest tasks as a potsy. And it's the weirdest thing. But the tilt table test is they put you on a table. Your feet are supported by a platform. They strap you to the table so that if you pass out while you're upright, you're not going to fall off. They start you at supine, which is lying position, and they take all your vitals, and then they tilt you up a certain amount of degrees. Some hospitals will go straight to 80 degrees, slowly. Some will put you at a certain degree, and then again at another higher degree. It just depends. Mine, they put me up to 80 degrees slowly. And my body went bananas.
Oh my gosh.
My heart rate went to 165 beats per minute. My blood pressure, and I'm not moving. This isn't, my body's freaking out, but I'm not moving.
And all of this is because the nervous system is going haywire right now.
Yes.
Oh my goodness.
So, and that's what POTS stands for, is the postural. So your posture.
Right.
Orthostatic is change of posture. Tachycardia is fast heart rate. And then syndrome is because it, affects all kinds of symptoms, and they kind of don't really understand why. But so my blood pressure went to 185 over 150.
Oh my God.
My EKG, my heart on the EKG just went crazy. And I was sitting in the room waiting for them to let me go home, and 2 hours went by, and I was like, what is going on? And finally the nurse came in and she's like, we're admitting you.
Wow.
So my body had gone into stage 3 hypertensive crisis during just being tilted up 80 degrees. And that's not even full upright. That's
right.
I thought I had a seizure during the tilt table test. That's what it felt like, a conscious seizure. Like I was having a seizure, but I was fully aware of it. Every cell in my body was tingling. The room grayed out. I lost the ability to speak. I couldn't move my eyes. I couldn't move my body. Yet the nurse was telling me my entire body was shaking.
Wow.
It's horrifying. The tilt table tests are not fun.
Oh
Um,
man.
and then it takes your body about a week to recover from all of that.
Because of the
So
convulsing, like all that
yeah,
stuff.
and not everybody gets that convulsing. I learned
Mhm.
from my autonomic specialist that I experience convulsive syncope. So if my body cannot get to a point where it's horizontal, I will convulse before I pass out.
Wow.
And everybody's syncope is kind of different, or that's the word for passing out.
Syncope.
Yeah. So everybody's experience with passing out is different. Some people kind of get warning signs. Some people don't fully go out. They kind of call that a brown out. And then some of us, like me, I go completely out. The first time I passed out, we were deplaning, and I woke up to my husband and the pilot carrying me off the
Oh
plane.
man.
So, yeah, that's the testing they do for POTS. They also have to rule out any heart conditions. So you're going to go through a stress test. You're going to wear, a
Definitely
Holter
cardiologist.
monitor. Yep. They're going to do an echocardiogram. They want to make sure that, physically and functionally the heart is sound. And so they have to rule all of that out before you can get a POTS diagnosis. And a lot of people feel like it's the doctors just dismissing them, but it's really not. That's part of the POTS criteria is, ruling all those things out. They have to rule out any thyroid conditions, because if you have, Hashimoto's and your thyroid goes hyperthyroid, it can cause tachycardia.
Right.
So, there's a long list of tests that you go through before, you can really officially be diagnosed with POTS. And I think some people now, it's getting a little bit easier than it was, a few years ago. Awareness has just really helped that. I know some people that simply got diagnosed with just the orthostatic, vitals in the doctor's office, and yep, you have POTS. Here's your referral to go see, whoever.
Right.
So it's getting easier, and that's
Ah.
good.
So does that mean no roller coaster rides for you at all?
I've been to Disneyland since, and I probably shouldn't have, but
See that hard headedness, man. There it is. I gotcha.
I spent all of probably 2023 and 2024 of, I'm not going to let this define me. And I suffered for
Oh
it.
wow.
So I've learned now, and I in fact, I hate that phrase. So, but, I've been on, Tower of Terror, which is now the Guardians of the Galaxy. And I love that ride. I saw stars. I almost passed out, and then the ride ended. So,
Oh my gosh. And like I know I know I don't have, pots or anything, but you know what ride got to me?
what's
Splash
that?
Mountain. Splash Mountain with the little bunnies on the inside, the little log ride. Right? It was eerie in a sense. You know what I mean? They're
Right.
singing at banjos, you're all calm and stuff, water splashing around like a little kid. And then here you go, you see the whole park in front of you. You dive down. But
Yep.
I guess now the side question, or if we can take a quick side quest, because you talked about, I'm not gonna let this define me. I'm gonna be who that person needs to be. The grief of chronic illness. How has that been? As far as like reconciling what is going on with you with who you imagined you would be in your career, in your later life. How has that reconciling been?
Oh man. Grief never goes away, and that's something that I'm still working on.
Right.
Because mine is still so relatively new. So I still know what it feels like to be, that productive person, that normal person, that I can just get up and go shopping whenever I want. I can clean the house as a de-stress because I'm angry. And I honestly miss that.
Well, be angry as you need to. No, just kidding.
Yeah, grief, it's such a heavy emotion, and I'm still dealing with that. I sought out therapy last year, um about in May. It just became too much for me to handle anymore. I have my first appointment with my third therapist because it's hard to find a therapist that truly understands, what an energy limiting condition does to you, not just physically, but mentally.
Right.
And, the first therapist said, just don't think about it, which, okay, well, if I could do that, I don't need you. And
Exactly. Yeah. Well, what's the point? I could just veg out in front of a TV and call it
right.
quits.
Yeah. So it's a work in progress. That one, it just, I
I
don't,
got you. I got you. I
it's like
got you.
you're losing yourself, and every single day is a constant reminder of what you've lost, because that memory is still so close of how I just used to get up and get dressed and go to the gym, or, go help my daughter with whatever she needs, or my boys, and I can't do that anymore. I can't just hop in the car and go do whatever I want. And, I can't even go to the store by myself anymore. So I don't drive most days, because if I turn my head too fast, everything just spins, and that's not safe.
Oh my God.
So I've gone from being, a hyper independent person to being completely dependent on everybody. Yeah, and that's just, it's really heavy. It's really, really heavy.
Uh, we'll touch on that aspect a little later on. But I do want to get to some of the relief that you've been finding. You've talked about finding a lot of relief through hormone health and nervous system regulation. For someone listening who is tired of the pill for every ill approach, how did shifting your focus to your nervous system change the game for your daily flares?
Um, it definitely quieted things down. It's not a cure by any means. But having that constant fear in the back of our minds, that keeps our nervous systems on edge.
Hmm.
And so, just finding ways where I can find stillness and remind my brain and my nervous system that I'm safe. And through repetition, that's how our brains can kind of relearn that we are in fact safe. Because with autonomic nervous system regulation, our nervous systems can't tell the difference between a heated email or being chased by a lion. Like, um,
Right.
I've had a few moments where I've had to deal with a contractor that wasn't doing what they were supposed to, and during those phone calls, my heart rate is just crazy, and that's out of my control. Like, I but I've found ways, like you said, to calm that. And as far as the pill for these ills, there's no medication for a dysregulated nervous system. The meds that we take are to help manage, air quotes.
Right.
But
Definitely air quotes.
they don't treat or cure. Most of my medications are prescribed off label. They are meds that are made for other conditions.
Right.
And so, they can only do so much. And what really helped me is, I guess, combining both. So I have a lot of medication that I take, but I have my natural tools like pacing and stress reduction, and nervous system care, which is like diaphragmatic breathing, meditation, relaxation, and and again, those are the things that we usually hear as unsolicited advice.
Right.
Oh, have
Right.
you done yoga and meditation? So, trigger warning, but like I had said before, it's not a cure. It's not treatment, because if it was, that I never would have gotten sick in the first place, because I, was a dedicated yogi. And but deep in my soul, I'm an outdoorsy girl, and honestly, we're all basically complicated houseplants. We we need sunshine, hydration, and nutrients. And so I learned that you can, rebalance your circadian rhythm by sitting outside for 10 to 20 minutes within an hour of waking. Sorry.
Right.
So, I try to do that as much as possible. Obviously not during the summer. It's way too hot here.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And in the early, gentle times of sunshine and, touching grass or I touch houseplants. I talk to my houseplants. All of that is calming for your nervous system. And sometimes it's like the most simplest things. I actually came across a program. She's a physical therapist on Instagram. She also has EDS, POTS, MCAS. Her name's Melissa Keel, and she has a program called Regulate. And I started doing that program this year, actually, because I found it and I thought, okay, this is a little bit more guidance on top of what I'm already doing. And I just started it, but it's very intuitive. It's very simple. It's not too expensive. I think it was like $50.
Right.
But that's helping a lot. Just, reminding the body, the nervous system to be calm. And because, one of the biggest challenges too with MCAS is it creates thoughts of doom. So when the mast cells release these chemicals, your mind can actually go to this place where it thinks you're dying.
Oh, man.
And so trying to keep yourself out of that headspace can be a challenge when the MCAS is flaring. And, it can really cause a lot of people to spiral. And then it's going to create this vicious cycle. Then now your nervous system thinks, oh my gosh, danger, I'm not safe.
Fight or flight.
Yeah, exactly. So it really takes a lot of work just to try to calm everything down. And it has taken the edge off of, the flares. I know that when those thoughts come, this is not reality. I am not dying. I am safe. And you kind of just have to talk yourself out of that. And if I can, stop in the moment and do some diaphragmatic breathing, I can actually get most of the symptoms to calm down without having to take one of my rescue meds.
Nice.
Yeah. And then, if some time goes by and it's still just, hitting hard, then I know, okay, this flare is too much for the natural tools. Now I need to take my rescue meds. But obviously I'm monitoring before I make that decision. I'm checking my vitals. I don't want people to put off taking their rescue meds.
Right. Awesome.
So, I check all my vitals, while I'm trying my natural tools. And then if I have to go the next step, then I absolutely go the next step without hesitation. So.
Well, let's take a next step. Let's switch direction to another aspect of your life. When you talked about going to the gym, why don't you tell everyone about the time that you won Miss Olympia back in 2024?
Very funny.
Just kidding. But seriously though, coming from a gym heavy background, your identity, I'm pretty sure, was probably tied to what your body could do. Now that your body requires more rest and regulation, how have you redefined what strength actually looks like? Is it harder to be still than it was to hit a personal record?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's so much harder to, choose rest when I want to do. I'm that person. I'm the ride or die. You say go, I'm there. Let's go. And so, I'm to have to say no because my body is telling me I need to rest it's so isolating. And, it can be devastating because there's so many fun things going on that the family is doing or that my kids are doing or, and I can't, I have to rest. Right. And that's harder than any, HIIT class or CrossFit or, intense training session ever was.
Wow.
And, strength, the definition of strength now is it's unrecognizable. Because now strength is stopping before my body forces me to. It's choosing rest when my brain is still screaming, you're fine, just push a little longer. And it does that constantly tells me, you're fine, you're just being dramatic. You can do, 2 more things and then you can go lay down. And
Wow.
I have to ignore that voice in my head. And I actually, I have an app that my doctor recommended that helps me, realize that I'm not, let's see. It helps me realize that like what my brain is telling me isn't true. Because the app will go off and say, you've been in exertion mode for 2 minutes. And this is all the while my brain's been telling me you're fine. Well, obviously I'm not, because
right.
my heart rate's starting to climb, and that's with heart rate meds. So that means, yeah, I absolutely need to go and sit down. And I used to train myself to override that discomfort, and now I'm training myself to listen to it. And it feels completely backwards. And
It's a whole paradigm shift.
Yeah. And it's deeply uncomfortable still, even, this is 7 years later. And, there's nothing glamorous about canceling plans or lying down when you don't want to, even when my body's screaming for rest. But, my brain does not feel that I'm sick enough, but I have to. I have to make these adjustments. I have to make these adaptations. And they hit in every single aspect of my life. Even getting dressed and basic hygiene takes special calculations and constant thought. And it's that restraint that's what keeps me at the level that I am today. And that's the strength that, I'm forming.
Right. I can imagine being a mom and a wife while managing chronic illness adds a whole other layer of complexities. How do you handle, I think you alluded to it, just now, the chronic guilt that often comes with having to say no to your family, and how do you teach your loved ones to understand your energy limits?
Yeah. I still definitely deal with guilt. It's not as loud as it used to be. I think I'm finally kind of, coming to terms with this, but it's a difficult emotion to manage, especially for a lot of us with EDS. You'll find similarities in a lot of our stories. So many of us were, the go-getters, the, type A personality, the high achievers. And so, part of those personality traits is being hyper independent and hyper vigilant. And I'm also a people pleaser. So the guilt really lays heavy with me. And, I constantly would feel guilty for resting, and I would feel guilty for canceling, and, for not being the version of myself that everybody was used to. And, I think a lot of that guilt comes from the fact that I know I look fine on the outside. I look like a healthy person. What helped me, and I learned this with time, was realizing that guilt doesn't protect my relationships. It just exhausts me.
That is powerful.
Yeah, it wasn't worth it. So instead of constantly explaining my illness, I started explaining my capacity. And because that's something that, people can understand more. Even the most supportive person in your life doesn't fully understand what you deal with every day. And they're never going to be able to, ever. But they can understand your capacity. Instead of saying, I'm sick or I can't do that, I say, today I have about 2 good hours, and I want to use them wisely.
And it also sets boundaries.
Yes. So let's plan, whatever we're going to do, within the 2 hours that I have, And then, then I can go home and rest, and they can choose to do, whatever they want to do. And, cause if I push past my limits to make other people comfortable, then I pay for it later. They don't. They go off and live their lives. I'm the one that pays. So
Right.
it just,
Oh, yeah.
I kind of had to realize that, obviously after I learned the hard way. So,
Yeah.
but when I pay for it later, that doesn't help anybody. Then I'm completely down and I can't do anything. So, now I model my limits and I show them, what my pacing looks like. I, help them be familiar with the app that I use. And, sometimes my husband understands my pace points more than anybody else because that's our language now. And, so I'll use that and I say no early instead of collapsing behind the scenes later. Yeah. And it's uncomfortable. It's not fun saying no, but at least when I'm up front, then, friends and family know what to expect.
Right.
And that's made the guilt, I think, a little bit easier.
I'm putting that in my back pocket. I took some notes there. But Celestial, I think it's so easy to feel betrayed by our own bodies. It's like being trapped in a cage. You're a trapped enemy. What was the first step you took toward actually trusting your body again? I mean, even when it still wasn't performing the way that you wanted it to.
I'm definitely still working on this one.
Look, I get it. I'm trying because look, the other day, and I'm gonna little transparency here. The other day, I decided New Year, I'm cleaning out my garage, and it took practically the whole day for me to reorganize, throw away things, and knowing my whole situation with my kidneys, my energy production was just not with it. Like I started off really good, and then after a while, I started to slow down, and by the end of the night, trying to go to sleep would not happen. The next night would not happen. So I had to look into it. I did a little quick deep dive searching, and what I've researched was that uremic toxin buildups in your body when your kidneys aren't super functional, and it prevents you from sleeping. So here I am pounding it out, trying to think that I had the same capacity to do things as I used to before all of this. And then I'm paying for it on the back end. I mean, bags, luggage is under the eye. I'm sluggish, and I think I want to trust my body again, but when I have those experiences, it's still tough to this point.
Yeah, I can completely understand that because with POTS and MCAS, when we overdo activity, well, especially if you have hyperadrenergic POTS or hyperPOTS, your body produces too much norepinephrine. So if I push too hard during the day, that builds up in my system, and then I feel exhausted, but my body is physically wired. And so I know exactly what you're talking about. And well, not exactly, but I can relate, and then with MCAS, with too much activity, it the mast cells will release histamine and all of their other chemicals. It's 1,200 or something from what I've heard. And histamine will keep you awake too. So it's kind of this, it's backwards.
Yeah.
Because they always tell you, you're not sleeping well because you're not active enough. Well, our bodies are different. If we're too active, then we're not going to sleep.
Yeah,
and
we're not.
It creates this horrible cycle.
You see, and that's the beauty of what we're trying to do here. While I have one, this one diagnosis, and you have this other one, we get that struggle of what it means to overwork and not be able to rest afterwards because our body can't process it well enough. So I thank you for sharing that aspect because I really didn't want to feel like I was alone in that one. But here's what we're gonna do now, Celestial. We're gonna take a good pivot right now. We're gonna go to a segment called the espresso shot. I'm bringing back the espresso because we're almost at the bottom of our cup. I call this the espresso shot because we're gonna just pick up the pace really quick. I'm gonna give you 3 quick fire prompts. All right, I don't want you to think too hard. Just give me the first thing that pops up in your mind. Are you ready?
Yeah.
All right. If your chronic illness gave you an actual literal superpower, other than the ability to nap anywhere, what would it be?
I have no idea.
Just give me something. What? First thing. Boom.
A superpower. I want to know what doctors are thinking.
Mind reader. Like, look at this guy again coming in here with this.
Yeah.
Okay, next question. What is the one song that gets played on repeat when you're stuck on the couch and need to feel like the main character?
Oh gosh.
Yeah, there we go. Let's go.
I'm horrible at naming songs.
You got a rhythm or something? If you want to sing it.
I like Billie Eilish. I like her "What Was I Made For." That's a good song. Yeah, I don't know. There's too many.
All right, and then the last question: if you could pick any animal besides a zebra to represent the chronic illness community, what would it be and why? There we go. Yeah, let's go.
My brain immediately said sloth.
That's good. Wait, what? Slow. Wait.
That's my new spirit animal.
Time all the way out. Sloth. Okay, why? Why sloth? Are we? Because we move slow. We don't have energy.
Yeah. I told my husband that my new spirit animal is a sloth, so that was just on the top of my brain.
Wow. I'm waiting for raccoon, maybe butterfly, mosquito, something. It's sloth. All right, we'll take it. All right,
Okay.
we'll take it. Oh man, all right, that was actually fun. I think we all need some mind reading superpower on the hard days, especially when we go to the doctor's office.
Yeah.
But sorry, sloth. But truly, Celestial, talking with you today has been such a masterclass in resilience. My goodness, I hear you when you talk about making time for your family and probably having to say no, and then reminiscing on who you were, with everything that's going on and the grieving process of all of that. That high climbing down from the super productive woman, and in my case, being a teacher, you were a paralegal, but then we all came crashing down into a new life because of our chronic illnesses. That resonates so much with me. You've shown me that even when the body changes the rules, we can still find a way to win. So to close this out, we have the final brew, which is our last question. If we were sitting here with a listener who just got their diagnosis today, all right, they fresh out the doctor's office and feels like their whole world is ending, what's the one piece of wisdom from your journey that you'd want to pour into their cup to give them a little bit of hope for the road ahead?
I want them to know that this diagnosis doesn't mean that you're broken. It means that there's finally a name for what you've been dealing with. And that matters more than most people realize. You're not being dramatic. It's not anxiety. It's not all in your head. It's real. And you're grieving something very real. And you don't have to figure it out right now. You don't have to be brave or positive or productive. Just listen to your body, learn, be gentle with yourself, and you'll find your footing. Because this road changes you, but not in the way you're afraid of. Your life might look different and smaller in some ways, but it can also become deeper, more intentional, and more in aligned with what your body actually needs. And most importantly, you're still you. Your worth didn't come from what you could do before this. And it doesn't disappear because your body works differently now. And, for all those young kids out there, who are just starting out and, your dreams feel paused, you still have time to grow and create and build a life that's meaningful on your terms. And, you might have to move differently, rest differently, or plan differently, but it doesn't make you any less capable or any less whole or any less worthy of the future you want.
Wow. Celestial, those words are exactly the kind of warmth we need in our community of chronic illness. Thank you so much for being so open with us and for helping us see that there is a way to thrive, even as a zebra.
Yeah.
Where can listeners go to follow your journey?
Instagram is, like I said, where I'm most active. I'm also on Facebook. I'm on Threads. I started a blog, but I haven't really dived much into that as I probably should. But
Well, there it is. For everyone listening, if you felt a connection with Celestial's story today, please go and follow her. I mean, please, like, get connected with her. I'll also have all of her tags and even her websites in our show notes. Also, if you enjoyed this pour today, the best way to support the Chronic Brew is to subscribe, leave us a review, or even better, share this post with a fellow spoonie who might need to hear Celestial's message today. You can find me on Instagram at MrCoolBeans2889 to stay tuned into my journey with chronic kidney disease and how I'm helping to build a bridge of understanding across the spoonie community. Again, guys, I want to thank you for pulling up a chair and listening to us as we share this time together. Remember, your story is your power. You are your best advocate. You have a voice. And with that, we'll see you at the next Chronic Brew. I'm Mr. Cool Beans, and I'm out. Peace.